Memory transcription subject, Slanek, Venlil civilian. Date, standardized human time, February 20, 2137. The lack of ventilation inside the statue rendered it quite stuffy, which led to me donning an environmental suit with internal cooling. It wouldn't be ideal if my panting gave away that there was someone inside the statue. The icon of Nikonas was nearly double his actual height, and even had him holding a flamethrower. The Duerten had a sense of humor, I'd give them that. Whatever Koji passed along to her people, the statue had been constructed hastily and my plan was greenlit. The workmanship looked decent, in spite of the condensed time frame. The Kolshians were receptive to the homogeneity's offer to return to the fold, not knowing hidden venom was behind the talks. The Duerten had a better idea than my motion sensor. They'd disguised a camera into the base, placing other knobs around it to conceal it. I'd tested the escape door before we departed. There was just enough room for me to kneel, and spring out from a crouched position. I was also given a backup firearm, to avoid any technical issues. The moment of truth came when Alpha's gunships greeted us above world, scanning us with sensors. The masking technology obfuscated my signature enough, since the hidden compartment was painted with special materials that prevented light from passing through. I had peeked at my camera screen when the ship's crew disembarked, and the Duerten were shown inside the Federation Hall under careful watch. The Kolshians had quadrupled the amount of guards on site, with several looking down from newly built watchtowers. "What is this?" a Kolshian soldier demanded, as Ambassador Koji pushed the statue down a cargo ramp. I had needed to wedge myself between the walls to keep from sliding. "Shit, is that Nikonas? It's a striking likeness." Koji flapped her wings in agreement. "Yes, it's a gift as part of our peace offering. We would appreciate if you could display it somewhere, and allow us to show it to your leader as part of our humble apology." I'm sure there's room for it in the garden, though it wasn't authorized before." "Is this offering not good enough for the Commonwealth? Duerten artists didn't do well enough? I thought we were here to reunite our peoples, not to be insulted and spat at." Routine protocol could certainly be waived if Nikonas deems fit. I meant no offense. We'll place it out in the garden, and you can go right in to see the High Chief." "Very well. I expect the Federation to respect our contributions, in light of the impact we have to the war. We'll follow your pal." I watched with bated breath, as Koji was escorted inside the hall. The Kolshians weren't that trusting, giving it a lengthy scan that raised my hackles. One soldier rapped on Nikona's chest above, finally seeming content when it didn't sound hollow. Thankfully, my compartment was tucked below the bulk of the statue. As cramped as it was, the Duerten made a wise decision to minimize the space taken up by me. It lowered my risk of detection, and limited the amount of off-putting cues that would be visible. The statue was moved onto a large dolly, with several Kolshian soldiers exerting themselves to push it across the clean sidewalks. Blood hummed in my veins, as I fantasized about popping out now and shooting these grunts at point-blank range. With the hour of my plan in sight, the fear and doubts had evaporated. I was excited for the deliverance of sweet revenge, for me, for Marcel, and for every Venlil affected by the Federation. However, my wrath had to be saved for the one who deserved a summary execution. I had plenty of time to think, hours without any stimuli, other than listening to guard chatter and surveying my surroundings. My life had gone downhill in a hurry. I ruined the only real friendship I ever had, and I erased my fear at the cost of my soul. The humans and I had no idea what we were awakening, from our shaky beginnings down this path. When Nikonas fell at my claws, if I was taken with him, 2 monsters would be killed. This was the only way to be free of the Federation's tampering, once and for all. Nikonas is the one at the helm of the war, who plans to forcibly cure and use humanity. He gave the orders, for Milo and every other battle, and laughed about the centuries of torment for other races. He'll do anything for power. He is pure evil, lacking respect for nature or any other societies. This would be my final act to protect humanity and Venlilkind. I could still hear despondent words in Marcel's voice, demanding an account for what I'd done, but I had the conviction to pep myself up. The Duerden saw the wisdom in my plan, so while Koji had called it deranged, there must be merit to why I was doing it. The galaxy would be a better place without Nikonis drawing breath. I repeated the mantra to myself, and ruminated on how good it had felt to execute the Kolshan scientist at Milo. Hours replaying that moment worked me into a fervor. Where is Koji? I thought to myself. How long is that Duerden going to dawdle inside? She was supposed to bring Nikonis here, you think he'd want to see the stupid statue? Even fixating on my impulses wasn't enough to stave off boredom, stuck in an uncomfortable suit and a cramped space. As I was half contemplating going on the prowl, seeking out the chief, distant chatter finally hit my ears. It had gone from daylight to an eerie dusk, with faint illumination falling on curated tussflowers from the sinking sun. Koji and Nikonis' voices floated behind me. The Duerden ambassador to humanity was the perfect figure to renounce Earth and make amends. The duo were laughing like old buddies, seeming to mock Terrans. I doubted Koji had to fake a word she said. Was shocked to learn humans groom themselves, the Duerden was saying. They trim those tiny patches of hair, paint their claws, and polish their canines. Predators dolling themselves up, it's hilarious. Nikonis clasped his tentacles behind his back. In a predator's mind, they truly think they're sapient. We know better, of course, there might be a tiny bit of credence to higher cognition in humans, but it's minimal. Flesh-eating beasts figured out germ theory, unlike the yodel. Well, it's fortunate those human monstrosities bathe, or they'd smell of blood and carcasses. Just to not smell more rancorous than they already do with that sweat, they're dripping in it. I've seen it pool under their armpits, and it's fucking gross. We never wanted to be friends with them. Remind me why I shouldn't aim for Koji after Nikonis? The way she talks about Terrans is disgusting. She's lucky we have the same enemy. The Duerden was positioned out of reach of Nikonis, with guards keeping the duo apart. I grimaced when the Kolshan leader stopped a hearty distance from the statue, admiring it from afar. He inspected it for several seconds, before returning his focus to the avian. Curses flitted through my mind. I had thought that he'd view it from every angle, and be drawn in by his own towering image. It represented the power he wished to lord over others, as well as the fawning attention he craved. What do you think? Koji prodded. Nikonis started to turn away from it. It's satisfactory, but I'm not sure it will help our image to keep this around. Are you joking? It's an expression of adoration from an independent party, who regrets their time outside the Federation. It's not like you built it. Please, humor me and appreciate the craftsmanship. Come close, look at the knobs on the base, they're carved with different flora from Alpha. The Duerden trotted forward without waiting for Nikonis' response, and I noticed the Kolshan leader curl his lip with a bit of irritation. He trailed after the avian, offering a cursory glance at a knob to appease her. The gray avian was stationed right in front of the camera, and the escape hatch, though she was struggling to coax Nikonis into position. I might have to go for a suboptimal ambush. Feel the quality materials, and the level of detail. I want you to appreciate it, Chief, give me some interest. We don't give gifts lightly. Worried the press are going to catch you? Koji squawked. Nikonis trudged up with reluctance, and the Duerden moved out of the way so he could take her place. The indigo skin containing his violet blood, and the bulbous, sickly orange eyes harboring evil intent were right before me. This was the time to strike. Given that Koji had been instrumental in luring the Kolshan to this spot, my anger toward her eased a bit. I ensured that my paws were ready on the gun, and wrapped my tail around the statue's release lever. With a single, unhesitating tug, the assassination attempt was set in motion. After dreaming about this moment for hours, all that rushed through my mind now was Skalga and Earth, my two homes. I thought about Jency and her tears at my brother's funeral. Thanks to what I was about to do, she would be mourning her other son's death in no time. If Marcel truly still cared for me, he would be grief-stricken too. This choice of mine was going to hurt the people I loved, yet I still had the resolve to move forward. The door slid open, and I lunged toward the Kolshan that was mere feet away. "What the?" Nikonas gasped out a few words, and alarm flashed in his eyes. Before his guards could even draw their weapons, I'd gotten off several trigger pulls into his center of mass. Violet blood gushed from the wounds, but I made sure I kept pulling to ensure the job was done. The Kolshan leader crumpled to the ground, while Koji had taken to the skies in a hasty escape. I landed on all fours, shoving the barrel into his temple. Guards had drawn their weapons, and I could hear shots being fired toward me. Pain seared through my stomach, nearly blinding out all sensory input, but I managed to depress the trigger again. Brain matter spurted over my wrists, as another bullet struck me in the leg. My crooked limb gave way underneath me, and as I fell, more shots whizzed by where my head had been. Nikonas was splayed behind me, lying in a pool of his own blood, his bulging eyes cold and lifeless. I could tell from his vacant gaze that he was gone. I'd done what I set out to do. The wicked tyrant, the face of the empire that terrorized every world they came across, was dead. I'm okay with being executed now. My sacrifice will be worth it, and bring humanity one step closer to demolishing the Federation. I still clutched my gun, as I gasped in pain on the ground. Orange blood was dripping onto the grass, matting my stomach fur with sticky fluids. I managed to raise the weapon, and fire a shot at a guard. It clipped him in the shoulder, though the gash unfortunately didn't cripple him. More soldiers were rushing to the scene, focused on me from all directions. I tried to fire again, but my magazine came up empty, with my bullets spent on Nikonas. My agency was diminishing, as rapid blood loss threatened to send my system into shock. "Cease fire. That's Slanek. Take him alive," a commander shouted. Kolshans rushed to stand over me, and kept their guns pointed at me. Medics checked on Nikonas first, finding him lacking a pulse. At an officer's order, they turned their focus to me. With my mission complete, I was ready to put an end to the thoughts that plagued me. I felt surprisingly calm about bleeding out in the hall's glamorous garden. Tentacles got to work packing my wounds and prepping me for transit. I clawed feebly toward their eyes, though my paw was swatted back with ease. "Fuck you," I spluttered. My life flashed before my eyes, as I laid there staring up at the sky. There was a lot of blood, I could tell that without looking. I'd never planned on making it out alive, and clearly, Koji hadn't concerned herself with my escape either. I stopped fighting, and relaxed into the ancient force sinking its grip into me. A cold, involuntary wave tugged me down to unconsciousness, as I fell further away from all senses and thought. Harsh light filtered into my eyes, as I slowly came to in a laboratory. It wasn't clear how long I'd been out, but I still felt disoriented. My wounds had been mended, and an N4 was sticking into my arm. It could have been used for a blood transfusion. A sick feeling clasped my abdomen, realizing I was in Kolshan custody. Researchers were conferring with each other, clearly talking about me. Something in the air they exuded reminded me of that evil scientist Navarus. The visuals in my periphery finally registered, as machinery I'd seen in the humans' anti-predator disease campaigns. This seemed like a facility. The reason Onso had cautioned me against touting my diseased mind. I tried to prompt my weak limbs to rise, but restraint strapped me to a table. The jangling sound alerted the Kolshans to my wakefulness, and a doctor skipped over with delight. I gulped nervously, though my throat was lacking in saliva. "Ah, you're awake. Now we can do our neurological scan, and determine the exact areas that trigger venal aggression." The doctor pressed a few buttons, and the cot I was laying on rolled down a conveyor into a machine. "Researcher's log, we are commencing our initial survey of the assassin. I anticipate few difficulties breaking this Venlil. He only spent a few months with the predators. Once re-education is complete, a docile Slanek will be an excellent example to our allies of why gentling and curing are necessary practices. My ears clamped flat with pure terror, listening to the hum of the machine. The Kolshians were scanning me to identify which parts of my brain they wanted to change, and then were likely to broadcast a before and after to demonstrate what an excellent job they'd done. I wasn't sure if the researcher had meant for me to overhear. Perhaps he thought it wouldn't make a difference whether I knew his intent. What if they convinced me to detest humans, and go back to being meek prey? I didn't want that. Regardless of what they did to me, I'd hold out for the memory of Marcel. I struggled against the restraints again, despite knowing it was useless. These monsters had me at their mercy, and given my role in Nicona's gruesome death, I imagined my treatment would be less than kind. Every ounce of my brain wished I had bled out in that garden, and that the tale ended just as Frankenstein's monster had perished. There wasn't supposed to be anything after the assassination was complete. I had to find some way to get out of here. The rest of my life suddenly seemed like an endless stretch of torment. I fell into a numb state of horror, realizing the unavoidable future in store for me. The personal sacrifices necessary to bring about Nicona's demise were higher than I had ever expected. The Kolshians chuckled among themselves as they scanned the terrorized Venlil's brain for places to poke and prod. Hatred simmered in my veins, and I yearned to kill every last one of them. Yet all the same, despite the burning rage that festered inside me, my deepest, all-consuming thought was that I missed my human. Memory stream terminates here. No further transcription data exists for this subject's neural signature. Memory transcription subject, Captain Sovlin, United Nations Fleet Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, February 21, 2137. Hunter was summoned to a UN base responsible for archives prisoners, accessible by a short shuttle ride to an undisclosed location. Tyler had been working on interrogations on site since our return to Earth, though the more I pressed, the more I got the feeling that claim wasn't representative of the truth. While my amber-eyed relic of the 1960s was finalizing the documents for his reintegration, I was determined to uncover what Officer Cardona, and possibly by extension, humanity, was hiding. Were the Terrans trying to convert the Farsal to our side, like they'd done with me? I wouldn't neglect aiding the human primitive, who'd become dear to my heart in spite of his antiquated ways, but it didn't sit well that I was the only soldier from the archives mission kept in the dark. Hunter was napping against my shoulder, somehow acting harmless despite his beastly origins from lawless days. When I interacted with him, old behaviors resurfaced from when Hania, my daughter, was alive. I'd devoted myself to catching the human up on modern learning. It was my first real look at Earth, without any safeguards or restrictions, but we'd plunged into those depths together. Hunter also needed a crash course on the wider galaxy. Things that a child Hania's age would have known were new to him. However, when I passed along overviews of alien currencies and markets on a whim, I'd seen his eyes light up the way my daughter's had the first time she saw the ocean. Despite being a rural farm boy, the Predator had an aptitude for the subject, soaking up complex ideas like a sponge. While basic science and simplistic technology confounded him, Hunter could identify trends and analyze data as well as a high-ranking Fissan or Nevek. If he wanted to adjust to the modern times, trading might be a perfect option. It's fascinating that the hyper-capitalist races are run by their highest corporations and conglomerates, the ancient human had remarked. Ruling purely on economic benefits seems unwise. I'm a laissez-faire guy, but you need some oversight. Entities can't be trusted to police predatory behavior on their own. Of course a primitive human says that. I'd wanted to reply, though I kept it to myself. If savage outliers could rise to power in your time, Hunter, I'm sure they saw economic exploits as another avenue to shirk all morals. Feeling my shoulder falling asleep, I tried to slip out from under Hunter's skull without waking him. However, without my weight to support him, the Predator began to topple sideways. His binocular eyes jolted open, and he yawned in groggy confusion. Dipping my head in apologetic fashion, I tried to shake the pins and needles from my arm. It was crazy that I could see a creature that looked like this, and once likely ripped prey apart with those youthful hands, as my son. It lives! I teased, swatting him on the knee with the blunt side of my claws. The human recoiled, surprised by the contact. I thought you went back into cryosleep for a moment. Hunter scrunched his nose. I didn't mean to fall asleep on you, Sovlin. Nonsense, it's fine. You were adorable. We're almost here, so I've got to return some feeling to my arm. I'm not sure how I feel about being called adorable. Any other species would take the affectionate remark and roll with it. If someone told me a few months ago I'd be trying to convince a downer predator that life's worth living, letting one snooze on my shoulder, do you know what I would have said? That you want my entire species to suffer, and that you'd claw my eyes out? Also, I'm not a downer, there's just objectively nothing to live for. The future sucks. Well, it'll suck a little less every day. You gotta press on to find out if things get better, and you can't think that the future sucks across the board. You got me to wake you up, after all, and I'm one of the most loved figures on Earth. I'm quite aware the opposite is true, Sovlin. I am grateful that you've stuck with me, even if you keep trying to throw away my cigarettes. The first time I saw you setting a stick on fire, and putting it in your mouth, I thought you were attempting suicide by smoke inhalation. I still do. Why would even predators do something so stupid? Tyler told you it's toxic and causes cancer. Not that it'd make a difference if it were true, but, name one reason I should take Tyler's word for anything. Fair point. That prim, Yodel, who didn't even know what aviation was as a kid, knows more than Tyler. Why is Onso not growing up with aviation relevant? Because I said so, Hunter Ernest Garner. All three names. Ouch. Ouch is right. Now get up. Let's move to the cockpit before landing, huh? We should be prepared for whatever they're gonna ask you. Hunter made a point of saluting, and I waved my claws dismissively at the predator. We ambled up to the cockpit, where Tyler was paying no mind to the automated transit shuttle. By regulation, someone who could pilot a craft was supposed to keep watch during takeoff and landing. That meant I needed to preside over the blonde officer for the descent. The plane had begun to tilt downward, and the windshield granted a clear view of desolate treetops surrounding a Rushod installation. UN security on the ground looked like ants from this height. Sovlin called your buddy primitive again, Hunter snitched immediately. I shook my head. Damn you. It doesn't count toward the jar. I stopped myself. Tyler rolled his eyes. That Yodel was studying rocket science when he was 13, and knows more than you about pretty much everything. I'd bet a kidney that he'd smoke you on an IQ test. As if. Onso repeats things he hears and he reads. Word retention doesn't mean. Tyler's holopad buzzed in his lap, revealing an incoming call. The tall human grew serious at once, and he pressed a finger to his lips for silence. Hunter gawked at the video call, an awestruck expression taking over his features. I wasn't sure if such exchanges existed in his century, or if they'd been in monochrome over computers the size of a building like he'd suggested before. It might have been more difficult to resist scoffing at him, had I not seen the face on the other end of the call. Marcel. The red-haired human was inconsolable, weeping through puffy eyes and red-rimmed irises. A box of tissues was just in view of the camera, with several wadded up on the desk. His posture looked utterly defeated and distraught, while his grooming was in shambles. It was clear he'd lost weight in the aftermath of the cure. Marcel wasn't quite as gaunt as when I'd held him captive, without any food, but he didn't look like a healthy predator. This certainly wasn't the put-together man who forgave me after Silas. I always feel guilty, just for interacting with him. Should I stay out of the picture? No, I can't, I have to oversee the shuttle's landing. Tyler. Marcel's voice was choked with mucus, sounding ragged and shaky. Oh God. How could this happen to Slanek? I should have stopped him, and now he's gone, and I don't know if he's dead or, there's nothing. Tyler narrowed his eyes. Hey, slow down. Breathe, buddy. Tell me, in plain English, what happened to Slanek? You haven't heard? Why would I know what happened to your exchange pal? The news. He shot Nikonas. The Durden snuck him to Alpha. The Kolshians made a video about what happens to herbivores who are around predators, but it's... Are you having a mental break? Slanek, the skittish and emotional Venlil who couldn't fight in a flight sim. I wish I'd lost it. Slanek's gone, his mom's begging me to know what happened, which I don't fucking know, and the last thing I said to him. The red-haired human returned to full-fledged sobbing, and buried his face in his hands. While our shuttle touched down on a landing strip, I punched the name Slanek into my holopad. Multiple headlines announced Nikonas' death, and UN intelligence was on record verifying that Marcel's friend was the assassin. I found that difficult to believe, even after seeing how bitter and angry the Venlil had been toward me. He'd tried to kill me while Arxer breathed down both our necks, so I knew he was neither level-headed nor pragmatic. Still, the magnitude of what the Venlil had done was enormous. Marcel? Hunter whispered. This is the guy you tortured? And who's Nikonas? I ignored the ancient beast's question, and tapped Tyler on the shoulder. It's true, what Marcel says about Slanek. None of the articles are certain whether he's alive, but the fact that the Kolshians haven't announced his death means they have something else in store for him. Marcel bawled. I can't do anything to stop it, or protect him. He said he was getting help. He lied to me, again. He's probably being tortured, just like me. Like I was. Tyler pursed his lips. We don't know that. Don't patronize me. We both know I'm right. I need you to help me. There's no chance the UN let me serve again, but I can't just let the Kolshians keep him. Tell me how I put myself on a warship to Alpha. I have to do something. No, you don't. You've done more than enough, and it should be obvious to you that you're not fit for combat. Forget the mental aspect. How would you ever integrate with a human unit, with such severe allergic reactions from traces of animal protein? It's not your fault, and you need to sit this one the fuck out. I can't go on like this. Nothing good ever happens to me, and everyone I ever cared about, there's nothing but hate and suffering. I try so hard to be moral and kind, and the fucking universe just pisses all over me. I'm done. I'm ready to die by a gun, one way or another, so if you're really my friend, put me on a goddamn shuttle. Listen to yourself. You're irrational, man. Slanek clearly had his own issues, but I know he wouldn't want this. He loved you. Maybe a little too much. I'm going to help you, but you have to be strong and be here for when we find him. For his family, for Nulia. Things will get better, and you're a good person who can bring a lot of positivity to this world. Marcel, it breaks my heart to see you this despondent. If I deserve to be happy, so do you, I interjected. I can't imagine your trauma and your pain, but you shouldn't give up. This is my fault, not yours, it starts and ends with me. Marcel heaved a tired sigh. I don't care whose fault it is. I just want it to stop. We're working on it. Tyler's blue eyes shone with as much sincerity I'd seen from him. His concern for his friend was apparent. I know you're wondering how I can possibly help you, but you called me because you trust me. You trust me, right? Yes, but I have no one else to call. So I was your first choice. I'm flattered. Listen, I'm gonna make sure you get to help out. I'll get in touch with the UN, some way, and see that you're put on something like reports. It all makes a difference toward bringing Slanek home. Second, I'll ask to go to Alpha, in your place, and do anything I can to bring down these fuckers, at the very least. Tyler, I can't ask you to do that. You have some sort of cozy detail. Us crayon eaters make our own decisions. You're worth it to me. I want Marcel Fraser in this world. But if I'm doing this, you better uphold your end of the bargain and carry on. Remember how happy you were learning about aliens? You're gonna treat your time abroad like an exchange program adventure, and they'll find a cure before you know it. You hear me? Yeah. Good. Buddy, we landed a few minutes ago, and I don't want the boys in blue barging in, floating phrases like dereliction of duty. I've got to, interrogate some, guests. Marcel chuckled, in spite of himself. You're not qualified to interrogate a Barbie doll. What are you really? Tyler coughed, flicking his pupils in my direction. What the fuck? I knew he was hiding something from me about his work here. Ahem, got it. Good luck with your interrogations, buddy, the redhead pivoted. Officer Cardona grinned. I love you, man. I'll be in touch as soon as I can, and believe me, I'm on this. Thank you, truly. Don't worry, I won't do anything rash. I'll talk to you in a bit, I'm gonna go lay down. The red-haired human disconnected from the call, and Tyler cleaned his misty eyes. It was moving to see how much the two predators cared for each other as friends. However, other thoughts warred for my attention. Marcel's skepticism of the real happenings at this base fueled my own suspicion, prompting me to find a way to snoop around once we got inside. I helped Tyler straighten his uniform, shifting between concern for my former captives and nosiness toward this current operation. Tyler? I know we go where they tell us, but I'd like to throw my name in with your request, I murmured. I owe it to Marcel, and his Venlil. Slanek might not have done this if he'd been allowed to take his frustrations out on me, or if I hadn't sparked his anger to begin with. Hunter raised his eyebrows. What? But, I need you here. You promised to help me navigate the world, Sovlin. I can't do this alone, you're all I have. I'll still be in touch, here for you at the press of a button, but I'm responsible for Slanek going off the deep end. It's not right for me to live while Marcel throws in the towel. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to do something. Please, Tyler. The tall human sighed. You did enough for Marcel on Silas, but I know you'll never believe that, so I'll forward your request. Anso will want to come with me, and it won't be a negotiation. If Sam and Carlos want to join, you better find out by this afternoon. Yes, sir. That's settled then. Let me walk you and Hunter to the lobby for your Q&A, and we'll sort out the rest later. I've got to get to my post. I wrapped an arm around Hunter's torso, trying to reassure him of my commitment to his welfare. As determined as I was to motivate Marcel to persist, this reawakened predator from the archives was beginning to feel like my son. I had to ensure they both sought continued existence. It was dubious how successful I was at deciphering Earth's ways, but I'd tried to set my primitive Terran up for success and fulfillment. He needed my guidance. No matter how far away I was, I would deign to be in touch daily if at all possible. Would you object to me, mentally adopting you? I whispered to Hunter. The primate scratched the brown hair on his scalp. No. Good. Now if only I could change your name. Are you sure I can't call you Ernest? No. That was Pa's name. I ain't my Pa, and I don't want to think about him none. Tyler escorted the two of us through the premises, down a walkway to an unassuming complex. UN guards were patrolling and posted at various entrances. Despite its remote location on their own planet, the humans hadn't relaxed security at this base. The predators were notably paranoid of attacks, anywhere and any place, but I thought it'd be wiser to concentrate security inside with the prisoners. That was unless the notion of archives inmates was misdirection, just like the fabricated interrogations. Maybe Hunter is privy to some information I'm not. He could have overheard something Tyler revealed without me present. Since this beast is my kind of son now, he's going to help me solve the puzzle. I pushed the issues with Slanek to the back of my mind, knowing that I'd already committed to do what I could. Dwelling on the Venlil's crazed, yet successful, assassination would only provide a disservice to Hunter, and it would distract me from assessing the situation here. Why would the Predators alter the facts about their activities with me, when I'd proven my loyalty and discretion? I'd been willing to do everything the United Nations asked, without questions or hesitation. It was ridiculous that the primates would keep me out of the loop now. Here we are. Tyler ushered us into a lobby area, and spoke a few words to a receptionist. He turned back to us with a taut smile, scanning his card to unlock a secured door. "You'll do great, Hunter. I'll be there to take you both home, ramen tonight." "Again?" Hunter groaned. "Blame Sovlin and his stupid meat allergies. If you don't like it, cook for yourselves." The blonde human vanished down the corridor, and the receptionist informed us that UN personnel would be with us shortly. I waited several seconds to ensure Tyler was gone, and scoped out the area. A keycard was visible on the desk, which was likely able to unlock the sealed door. However, there was no way for me to snatch it, since it was in the direct line of her binocular vision. I nudged Hunter, whispering in his ear. "Distract her. Make a scene." "Why?" he hissed. "Because Tyler's not a good liar, and I'm tired of pretending he is." "Do it." "Yes, Dad." The brown-haired human stuck his tongue out at me, before sauntering up to the desk in exaggerated fashion. He tried to peek at the computer display, but she turned it away from him. Hunter made a pouting face, before removing his shoe from his foot. I gasped when he chucked it just over her head. The poor stranger seemed shocked as well. She rose quickly, approaching the ancient human to subdue him. I slunk around the corners of her vision, and swiped her card as she shouted at the primitive to calm down. Jackpot. I unlocked the sealed door, only to find two human guards standing a few paces away inside. Gulping, I tried to think quickly. Acting like I belonged here would be easier than shoving my way through, blind to where I needed to go. My posture straightened with false confidence, and I prayed my remaining spines didn't bristle and reveal my nerves. "I have an urgent message for Officer Tyler Cardona." "Captain Monahan asked that I pass it along for his eyes only," I said, trying not to waver under their scrutinizing binocular eyes. "You can verify with her, if you want to waste everyone's time and land yourself on a starship captain's shit list. Either way, I must speak with Officer Cardona at once." The guards, both young soldiers who seemed inexperienced, shared a glance, before one beckoned for me to follow them. The threat of being rebuked by a superior officer was menacing, and to their eyes, it was unlikely I'd accessed the facility at all without proper clearance. If I tried anything or was found to be lying, they could always restrain me. I followed the humans down a short hallway, retreading the ground Tyler had walked on. My heart was pounding in my throat from this act of deception, though I was also nervous to discover what the humans were concealing. The UN soldiers hesitated, before one rapped his knuckles on a thick metal door. I drew a deep breath as Tyler popped it open, granting me a peek of what was inside the cell. There were no farsal occupants, nor were there any rescued herbivores being purposefully hidden from their people. Instead, I could see comfortable accommodations designed for an unrestrained Arxer, which had its monstrous eyes turned toward the door. The blonde human seemed alarmed to see me, but I wasn't paying his incensed words any attention. Why would the Terrans have a Grey in custody, kept under the guise of the archives? My heart rate climbed even higher, and with rage churning my blood, I struggled to consider what this meant. All I wanted was to have the sadistic predator slain at my claws, for the torment its kind inflicted upon my family.